Hello everyone, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to this Procurement Leaders webinar together with ProcureAbility, where we are focused on the topic of spending smarter. So on today's session, myself and your co-host Darshan from ProcureAbility will share with you the findings from a recent ProcureAbility benchmarking study where they looked at the direct and indirect procurement excellence. And all of this is to help you identify both tactical and strategic initiatives that will really help you improve your procurement operations. So a really cracking webinar coming your way here today. My name is Nico. I'm a senior executive advisor with Procurement Leaders, and I'll be your co-host here today. Our key focus areas for today's discussion are, as you can hopefully see on your screen. So we will dive into the topics of operational excellence, so some of the key levers that can really help you improve your procurement efficiency. Then it's not just about efficiency, it's also about value enablement. So through cost savings and service and quality improvements, we'll figure out what those key levers for value enablement will be. And then also we'll look at the growth opportunities and the more specific strategies for growth that will then help you remain competitive in an ever-evolving market landscape. So really big, important topics for us to dive into today. The survey findings that we'll be running through here with you today have already been published in a big picture white paper called Smarter Spending, which is available for Procurement Leaders members on our marketplace, and then for others as well. They're downloadable through the webinar platform as well. There should be a section of additional resources from where you can download this, as well as a few other resources from ProcureAbility. You can also ask questions throughout this session. There's a Q&A box where you can drop your questions in and just keep them coming throughout the presentation. And you can also reach out if you need any tech support there from the platform directly. Hopefully that is not required for anyone, but just in case. With, I guess, these kind of key housekeeping points out of the way, I can introduce you to our speaker today, who is Darshan from ProcureAbility. He's their president, and I'll actually hand it over to you, Darshan, straight away for you to give a quick introduction to yourself and then take us through a few of the survey findings. So over to you, Darshan.
Okay. Thanks, Nico. Excited to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. My name is Darshan Deshmukh. I'm president at ProcureAbility. I've been a procurement professional for all of my life, for almost 20 years now. Started my career as a practitioner and then got into advisory, consulting, and managed services business. Worked in Asia, Latin America, Eastern Europe, and North America extensively. Most of my background is building organizational capability to deliver procurement and supply chain services for clients. And that has been part of my responsibilities for the last 20 plus years or so. What you'll see is I also had a partner in crime, Q, that was supposed to be part of this presentation, but she got last minute emergency that she couldn't join. So she sends apologies for it. So I'll try to do my best to cover for Q during this presentation, but hopefully you'll get the flavor for both practitioner and the advisory side of the business when it comes to various findings that we found out of the survey. So going to the next slide. Just if you don't know about ProcureAbility, just a brief overview about who we are. We are a procurement services firm focused on elevating clients' procurement function through efficiency, effectiveness, transformation, ability to build capability so that you can do more with less or more with more, depending on what the scenario might look like. We have 4 service lines. We have traditional advisory, where you'll do transformation, assessments, ability to look at building organizations and being able to change the procurement organization internally. Managed services, where we are coexisting with our client organization to deliver efficiency and effectiveness and how we deliver procurement. We have a digital practice where we have a spend platform, we have market intelligence platform, analytics as a service, and we deliver this as technology transformation for our clients, specifically in procurement and supply chain. And then staffing and recruiting, because we are in the procurement business, our recruiters we are only procurement only firm. So our clients ask us to find staffing and recruiting support for their own organization so they can get the flex capacity for them. So we are basically one-stop shop for everything procurement. So the way I kind of say it is we are procurement first and service delivery model second. So depending on what the client's needs might be, we'll change our service model on what they're looking for. As of last year, we are now part of Jabil Supply Chain Services. So Jabil is a large contract manufacturing firm and one of the best ones in the industry. And you will see brand behind brands. Jabil manufactures a lot of cool stuff. And we became part of that firm last year as part of their services portfolio. And we're excited to be part of the growth engine and being able to grow with Jabil scale globally. So that has been an exciting year for us to be part of Jabil ecosystem as well. So I think today what we're going to focus on is ProcureAbility spent last few months in a benchmarking study, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then synthesized version of that observations of that benchmarking study. We'll go through that. And today's session is really kind of giving you a flavor for those observations. Go to the next slide, please. So what was this benchmarking survey, right? We undertook a study across CPOs and senior leaders within procurement across multiple industries globally of various sizes. So we reached out to pretty much hundreds of industry players within this space and got the feedback from them, how they are managing their procurement organization, what are they doing within the spend management tactics, what are some of the things that are on their mind as they look for future. Right? And we tried to go as broad as we can, both direct and indirect space, so that we can get a holistic view on it. And we gathered a lot of information. We got feedback from almost 24 industries, globally based. So like we got the global nuances associated with that. And you will see the annual spend ranges between 40 million to 43 billion. So we also got small to really large. So you're getting basically a very good statistical normal distribution to come up with a right kind of data around figuring out what the trends might look like. And then our team kind of looked at all of that information and synthesized into key themes. And we are organized into 3 primary themes, and we'll talk about that in today's presentation. Number 1, operational excellence, what organizations are doing to operate more efficiently and effectively so that your cost of doing business is optimized and you're returning results for it. Value enablement, how procurement is increasing their value delivered to the business, and what are they looking at when it comes to people, process, technology to be able to drive that value across the organization. And then finally, what are some of the trends and challenges or changes that the organizations are going through so that the procurement landscape is changing, and what are some of the growth strategies that the organizations are looking at and what they should be focused on for future. So you will see like some of these key themes across this presentation, and you're going to get some flavor for it. There is a big picture report link at the end of the presentation, so you can download that we did that with the Procurement Leaders team, so you'll be able to download that. If you want to have any detailed conversation after this presentation, my contact information is there at the end of the presentation, so feel free to reach out and we can have a follow-up conversation as well. And as Nico said, if you have any questions in between, please feel free to type in the chat box as well, and we can try to address those. Okay. Now, we looked at those 3 themes and then tried to divide them into like 4 major buckets. And the key findings that we found is it's still the same old conversation around how do you manage people, process, technology to increase your engagement with the stakeholder. And most of the procurement organizations are basically tackling that as part of their growth journey. As all of us as procurement people know exactly that one of the biggest achievement is how do you get seat at the table with your business stakeholders, and how do you increase the engagement so that you can be proactive and not reactive organization, right? So that's number 1. all of you know, like procurement technology is going through a rapid change, whether it's different suites that you're working with or niche solutions that are trying to solve niche problems. What we found, the feedback that we got from the team is almost 1/3 of the organization still feel they're missing key technologies. So the procurement technology landscape is pretty, for lack of right word, crowded means there are a lot of players that are trying to solve niche problems. But it's still kind of evolving and maturing as we kind of go along. So the team, what we feel that the organizations are feeling, they still have to figure out the optimal mix of technology. I will talk a little bit more about that in next few slides. Organizationally, sorry, if you want to go back. Organizationally, what we found is we still are constrained as an organization. So it's not as functionally aligned as we would think it would be. People are still doubling up on different tasks within the organization. So like when it comes to the task, whether it's an efficiency-based task or a knowledge-based task, people are still doubling up to kind of be able to deliver that. And finally, it's all about driving efficiency and effectiveness through process and automation. So the teams are focused on that as well. So again, no rocket science here, but that's a self-assuring observation as well. It means the organizations take an intentional approach in how they want to mature within their procurement organization. Next slide. So now let's kind of think about the three themes that we kind of organized our information into and synthesized it. So the first one is operational excellence. How does procurement operate so that they can increase efficiency and effectiveness on how they deliver work? So let's start with a quick survey. One question we would like to ask all of you is, are your team members concurrently performing strategic and transactional work? Are your category managers doing some sourcing work or contracting or follow up with the suppliers or following up on purchase orders? If the answer is yes, please answer yes. If you think that you have a very aligned functional organization where only P2P, S2C, and category management are purely separated, and there is no overlap between the organization, you can answer no. So let's take 5 seconds to kind of answer this.
What do you think, Darshan? What's the percentage split between yes and no here?
I think it's going to be pretty high on yes. So let's see.
I would reckon so as well. Yeah. Going to give everyone, let's give them 5 more seconds to answer, then we can see what the results are. I'm seeing actually pretty good response rate. I think the upcoming elections would be benefiting from this level of response rates as well. But let's move on to the actual results here. So we'll see how we're doing here. And I think Darshan, you were right there. A fairly good good split in terms of yes responses here.
Yeah. And I think if you think about this, is what we observed with working with a lot of clients. The bigger the organization is, there tends to be investments in figuring out the functional organization and separation of various tasks. And then you end up maturing that over the period of time. And a lot of organizations are focused on building the organizations while delivering the work. And when you're doing that, you end up doing hodgepodge of activities to make sure that you're delivering the work. So this is not surprising, but it was kind of interesting to kind of do a quick poll and get the results from that as well. Move on to the next slide. So we did the same exercise with all the participants within the survey, and we asked very specific questions: is what sort of roles do you have, right? And it's an interesting response. If you think about the stats, 81% organizations said that they have category managers, 51% said they have buyers, P2P specialists, 61% said contract specialists, and 51% said data analysts. And around 44% said we have center of excellence that is dedicated to increasing efficiency, effectiveness, quality, knowledge, and training. When I look at that and the previous response that we got, I think there is a gray area on what the role is and the tasks that individuals might be doing. So even if you are a category manager, that doesn't mean you stop your work at just building category strategies, stakeholder engagement, and building category plans. You're most probably doing some sourcing and some contracting as part of your responsibilities. So I think this was kind of very obvious in this. But then I think when you see 50% of the organizations say they have buyers and data analysts and contract specialists. That makes me hypothesize that these are some of the organizations that are on the maturity journey on creating functional organizations. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in some follow-up questions, where some clients that we work with are intentional about creating that separation between category management and execution engine. And when you create that, then you tend to mature your functional organization as you kind of go along. So the next follow-up question that we had asked is, as a category manager, how much of your spend do you feel you have under management? And this was an interesting stat. The answer was average was 50%. So all across the participants, they said we manage around 50% of the spend that we have visibility into. And this doesn't include the stuff that they don't have visibility into. This is more what you know and how much you are kind of actively managing. The best in class that we see is between 75 to 85% of the spend actively managed. And when you're doing that, I think it's very critical to think about it as you have a scaled engine to be able to do this, right? So if you think about it, it's not like you are going to touch every dollar that comes to you, but it's more around, are you creating a system that automates some of the stuff that you should automate? Are you creating a system where you're staying proactive with your stakeholder? And are you creating a system where you have the knowledge and skill set to able to drive the value for the business, right? So all of these things kind of matter when you are building your capability to tackle 75 to 85% of the spend effectively. Another stat that you'll see in the middle is the average managed spend per category management FTE. So this is a little bit different. A lot of times people look at procurement FTE, but this is more around category management FTE. So how many category managers do you have actively strategically managing spend, right? And you will see a big number. It's like for small organizations, less than $500 million, it's 32 million. Medium is around 59 million, 60 million. And then large is around 238 million. Not surprising. Again, the mix is most probably a little bit different. When you think about the small organizations, that 32 million most probably is not just category management. That includes sourcing, contracting. That does include various tasks that are associated with that. Versus once you go to the large organization, they might actually truly be the category managers where they're looking at the long-term plan, get the business stakeholders, get aligned, create the portfolio, drive the conversation, and create that value engine for them as an organization. Another interesting stat on the right you will see is between direct and indirect. The average contract terms is around 3 years. So 2.7 years for indirect and 3.2 for direct, which is also not surprising. Like when you think about intentionally talking about category management, you end up doing between 3 to 5 year relationship with your key suppliers. Right? I want to highlight one of our JBIL Chief Supply Chain Officer's quote is, we should manage our suppliers as if they are our customers. And when you do that, you actually have a partner. The market is going to change. The environment is going to change. And you want to have key partners that partner with you to drive value for your business. And if you treat them as like truly just transactional supplier, then you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. So I think that that's very critical in this is take that very strategic intent around how do you manage your supply base as a category manager, and are you enabling the operational engine to be able to do that? I think that's one of the things that we kind of found out from these surveys. Depending on the size of the organization, maturity of the organization, how does this look from a stack perspective?
Darshan, if I can just jump in here quickly, I think it's really important that you talk about procurement maturity here as well, because a lot of the points that you've run us through really resonate with me based on the conversations I've myself been having with CPOs and their leadership teams, and my colleagues at Procurement Leaders have been having our own research as well on this topic. Overall, we find that the more mature organizations, when they get better grasp of spend under management, their kind of talent profile changes within the organization quite a bit. So we actually find in our own research that the organization on the more mature end of the spectrum tends to have more resources dedicated to category management as well. So this kind of combined with your figures there around how much spend these category managers specifically manage, it's really an interesting highlight and kind of a trend that we're seeing as organizations work on this. I kind of go on this procurement maturity journey. But what I wanted to ask you about as well is that obviously you speak to a lot of different clients, and Q might have had her own opinion on this as well if she was able to be here today. But based on your kind of client kind of experience and working with different clients, what are generally the most, I guess, effective tactics in increasing spend under influence here? Because you obviously talked us through the average and best in class spend under management figures there. But yeah, how do organizations actually influence spend a little bit more successfully?
Sure. That's a great question. I think when you think about category management, and if you try to go, like we call it basically a task matrix. And if you divide all the tasks that need to be done as a category manager or a sourcing manager and map it out as a big kind of a Lego box and divide them into strategic and tactical, there is some tactical element in what needs to get done. And what we found out is most of the organizations struggle with the same person doing strategic and tactical and ping-ponging between the tasks and not be efficient at it. So the organizations that are really successful in getting more spend under management do an effective job of separating strategic from tactical activities. So they will create a strategic engine that drives the value, and then the transactional engine or execution engine that drives efficiency and effectiveness and how they do the work. Now, when a lot of people think about execution, they think about only the downstream work like accounts payable, invoicing, P2P. But if you think about sourcing, that also has a lot of transactional execution aspect of it, running RFPs, contract management, contract administration. That is part of the execution engine that a lot of sourcing managers do as part of their job. If you create a very scaled model where you can do this a lot more efficiently, the category managers can spend time with their stakeholders to be able to drive the value. And I think the organizations that do this well tend to get more spend under management. The challenge that most of the organizations go through is, how do you do it? Do I build it in-house, or do I have a partner to be able to do this? And we have seen that a lot of the organizations will choose a partner to separate the strategic from tactical, because it's always you are building a car as you're driving it. And it's very hard to kind of say, I'm going to have an org plan for next 2 years and then hire and being able to deliver the value, versus you have to kind of figure out a plan to find low-hanging fruit, deliver the value, and being able to reinvest in kind of separation of this tactical from strategic, and they end up using like partner like us or other service providers to be able to drive that. And that tends to be one of the common tactics that a lot of organizations use.
Yeah, it really resonates with me. Thanks for sharing, Darshan. Yeah. Should we move on to the next slide, perhaps?
Now, when you do this, I think we just kind of touched upon that, is one of the biggest challenge that procurement goes through is getting seat at the table and engaging with the business. So when you think about your stakeholders, you want them to see procurement as a value-added, value-generating organization, and not a cost savings or a compliance-driven organization, right? So I think that's the transition. Now, in the last 10 years, I think that conversation has changed a little bit. I think it's people, all the CFOs and the CEOs see supply chain and procurement as a key value delivery organization, but it's still you have to gain the credibility with the stakeholders, right? And that continues to be one of the big challenges that the organizations face, and that has been the feedback from the survey. What are the top 3 challenges? Number 1 is the culture challenge that most organizations go through. And what is the culture of the organization? Do they see procurement as a back office function, or do they see this as an integral part of value delivery? Example, Jabil, our chief supply chain officer, reports to the CEO and is key part of managing cost and margin for the organization, and full stop. It's a very key part of the function, right? And versus where you might be working in a CPG organization or a pharma organization where procurement is more of an execution engine versus actually delivering like actual product development or engineering or R&D. Right? If you have acquisitions, there tends to be a little bit of a complexity around like different cultures and driving some changes there. One common feedback that we see is the business units feel that the procurement team they don't understand what my business is, right? That tends to get like a feedback, like, can you actually drive the value for me, or do you understand my business to drive the value for me, right? The third piece is looking at a lot of times the stakeholders would think that I know my suppliers better, I know which partner I want to go with. I don't want procurement to come in and add a bureaucracy tape to and make my life more difficult. Right? I think that tends to be another kind of the feedback that you generally get. The key part here is always lead with data, making sure that you understand your stakeholders' data when you have the conversation. So that's where you gain the credibility. Once you do that, then also spend time in making sure that you understand clients' business and what they're trying to accomplish. And then come up with solutions that resonate with them, right? It sounds simple, but I think when it comes to kind of thinking about it holistically, it takes a lot of effort. So I'm going to use an example. One of the common, and maybe not the common, but I think this is the example I'm going to use with one of our clients. One of our clients' procurement organizations struggled to build a credibility and relationship with the chief marketing officer, CMO's office. The CMO's office basically spent around $700 million in various spend. A lot of it is digital agencies, and they felt that they had that under control really well. Procurement team was trying to go in and build a credibility, and one of the things that they changed, we changed kind of messaging as part of the conversation is for the CMO, it's less about cost savings. It's about what is the return on the dollar they invested in marketing, right? What revenue you generated or what revenue you enabled as part of the conversation. So all of our data, we changed it from cost savings to more of a value delivery conversation on what you're trying to accomplish with these marketing dollars, and can we actually enable that, right? So that's number one. Number two, it's pretty common, it's still pretty common, where the agencies will give you a blended rate and say, this is what it's going to cost you as a campaign. There is no split, right? And then the procurement person would come in and say, can you tell me how many resources, unbundle it? And then that makes the marketing team uneasy because they say, it's all creative work. I don't want you to just give me a rate card and being able to, for me, having the right person is a lot more valuable than just having a rate card, right? We had that conversation with the marketing team, and then the team was able to convince that the intention is not to reduce the rate card. The intention is to make sure that you have right type of skills in the right roles so that you are getting a good solution. Yes, you have $1 million in budget. You're getting the best out of that $1 million. That's the key part of the conversation. When the chief procurement officer had that type of conversation with the chief marketing officer, it was almost like a couple of months, starting with the like really good understanding of base spend information. What's your strategy? How are you going to understanding their business and how you're going to drive the value for them? That relationship became a lot stronger. So I think these types of kind of activities are very critical. You need to really get into the client's business to be able to drive the value for them.
Darshan, on the kind of stakeholder collaboration piece, and I'm glad you brought that example about collaborating with the CMO's office, for example, because I think it's quite illustrative. I know, there's drive to increase collaboration with other stakeholders. It comes through in your research findings, and it's definitely something that organizations that I talk to all the time mention. It's, I think, actually one of the biggest drivers of procurement's, operational transformation as well. But if you think about the different stakeholder groups that procurement teams are trying to engage with, do you have any kind of insider knowledge on which stakeholder groups procurement teams generally struggle the most with in terms of increasing the engagement with procurement?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. If I want to kind of think about the groups where it's most challenging to build that credibility, I think the number one would be legal, number two would be marketing, and number three would be HR. And it's not because they don't want to partner. I think it's because there are sensitivities around how things are managed within each of those business units. So it's critical, whoever is the category manager that is working with these business units, truly understand what each of these units are kind of working with. And that's kind of the top three. I think one of the, if you were to ask me this question like 10 years ago, I would have called IT, VMO, vendor management office as part of that. But in the last 10 years, as the procurement worked closely with the IT VMO's office, I think that has actually become a lot more kind of integrated as part of the delivery. So because it's more hardware, software, and really understanding that business has been kind of a key driver for a lot of procurement professionals. But I think these three would be the ones where we see biggest challenge when it comes to kind of building the credibility.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and obviously it depends probably quite a lot from one industry and then to another. So some like very marketing focused industries, for example, probably procurement is a little bit more embedded within the marketing function as well. But yeah, overall, just interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, one more question we asked is, do you have a center of excellence that is dedicated? And what are some of the activities that they do, right? And if you will see that around 56% said they have a dedicated COE, and 44% said there is no formal COE. And it's generally a function of size and maturity. So the larger the organization, there are generally an intentional approach in building the COE that is focused on people, process, technology, knowledge, training. And if you think about COE, right, like one thing I want to kind of, one of our clients said, COE is not a person. It's a system that drives value for you. So you need to have people, process, technology to capture the knowledge, figure out what you're going to do with it, and then being able to make it easy for people to access so that it's efficient in consuming it. Right? And if you can create that and continue to enhance the skill level for the organization, you are able to accomplish what you are looking for. Right? If you see the bottom left, you say like 84% say they measure performance of the procurement team, 48% say developing benchmark for the procurement processes, and then 44% say they're tracking procurement projects. This is an interesting one where like how much time the COE is spending. If you think about it, it's really bean counting, right? Where you're actually trying to figure it out. Okay, are you doing the right thing? What is your metrics? Like you're spending a lot of time on that, right? And that's absolutely fine. That's part of the you need to know what you are working with. Right? And that tends to be like the big part of COE's mission. But what I would like to focus on is the green box on the right-hand side. I think ultimately you want the center of excellence enabling your team to upskill themselves depending on what the needs might look like. And this bar graph is going to change as the industries change or the size changes or even how procurement is maturing, right? But you will see some trends around what has been the focus for the center of excellence for various organizations. And it's an interesting stat to see, like a focus is more around getting the organizations ready for strategic work. I think that tends to be like the big focus if you look at like the on the right-hand side, what some of those bars look like. Okay. Move on to the next slide. So I think that was more focused on efficiency and effectiveness. Now let's talk about like enabling value through people, process, technology, and how the landscape is changing and how procurement can add more value within the ecosystem that they operate in. So we'll start with another quick poll. The question that we want to ask is, are you using multiple procurement platforms, whether it's contract lifecycle management, P2P, S2C, like best in class as a strategy? Or are you using an integrated one platform approach like Coupa, Ariba, SAP? Like you chose that's what you're going to go with and you're going to stick with that overall platform strategy. What are your organizations doing? So let's take like 5-10 seconds to answer this.
Yeah, it's another really cracking question. I know there's a lot of debate on this topic in the procurement ecosystem right now. Yeah. What do you think, Darshan? Whilst we wait for people to answer the survey, what are the kind of key, I guess, strategies that people should use to make sure that they kind of do get the best out of the whatever decision they end up making, whether it's using a best of breed solution or a single platform strategy. But what's kind of behind that decision making of choosing a strategy?
So I think, yeah, so I have a hypothesis what the split is going to be, but let's see what the results, if we can. I think it most probably going to be split.
But I think let's see. We can flash up the results just no.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's not, I think it's not surprising, but it is interesting that the organizations are, if you were to ask me this question 2-3 years ago, I would have said it's 50-50. I think there is so much niche optionality available within procurement tech space. I think organizations are willing to solve these solutions in a niche way, in a multiple platform solution. My other challenge is the single platform strategy tends to be, these are very expensive platforms. So like the organizations kind of say, okay, do I want to have a best in class, or do I want to have a single platform, which is multi-year commitment and being able to solve that? Right? So going back to your question, if you choose a multiple platform strategy, I think what you end up with is a hodgepodge of patchwork of systems. So what we're seeing is some of the teams do that as intentionally and say, I'm going to choose this one for CLM, this for P2P, and this one for S2C. I'm going to augment it with another generative AI or AI platform that pulls a bunch of things together and patch these together to get what I'm looking for, right? So that's like one strategy that a lot of organizations are using. On the single platform strategy, they realize that it also sometimes gives suboptimal results, like you're kind of fit in a box, right? So they will augment with another smaller niche players that are kind of flexible, that can sit on top of the single platform and being able to deliver some of the unique niche use cases that you are looking for. So it's not one or other. I think where you kind of end up with is you choose whichever strategy you want to choose, but you're still going to augment with maybe some other technology solution to get what you're looking for. I think that's what we're seeing in the industry in general.
Yeah, I think that's really spot on, because very rarely do you find a procurement organization who doesn't have a sourcing suite in place. But like you said, it's all about connecting the different more niche systems that can then work with the kind of more foundational procurement platform. Yep. But I'm quite really interested to see these results. Really, I was kind of maybe more leaning towards the best of breed approach being the predominant one here, but it's quite a big majority there. So good to get those results.
Yeah. So I think when you think about enabling technology and tools, so let's kind of think about the left-hand side and right-hand side as two separate things. So on the left-hand, some of the observations that are interesting here is source to pay S2P platform. It was kind of 50-50 of best in breed and end-to-end system when we did the survey. So like the bigger percentage of a little bit on the best in breed side was 50%, and one system was. And the hypothesis I'm using is most probably we had a bunch of large organizations that responded that had one suite solution on the S2P side. Interesting to see 25% responded that they don't have tech-enabled way to manage contracts. And when you think about the CLM as a work stream and how it matured in the last 5 years, I worked in that environment. My contract CLM is starting to mature quite a bit, and then being able to kind of drive that value through contract management is kind of important. And then the use of AI, the organizations are using artificial intelligence to streamline and pick up the use cases to be able to drive the value. And on the right-hand side, what was interesting to see is some of these are transactional execution activities. And as you kind of do this, you would expect some of these to be tackled already. But my hypothesis based on this is procurement still continues to be constrained. So they choose the big rocks to tackle. And then the small rocks are always kind of, I'll get to it. And some of these are small rocks that they don't get to it. And that's why I think they're kind of leaving that on the table. And so there needs to be a little bit of an intentional approach to how you're going to tackle some of these execution challenges as well.
And
next slide.
Yeah. And Darshan, just in terms of the kind of intentionality and more of the kind of practical view, are there any specific, perhaps, customer stories that you can share about organizations very intentionally solving this challenge?
Yeah. So I think what we're seeing is we talked about separating strategic from tactical as the first activity that most organizations are looking at. A lot of organizations are on the right-hand side, they're using an outsourced way of managing this, is taking a partner and they say, okay, this is the problem I'm trying to solve, partner with me to deliver actually results for me, right? So that has been kind of on the right-hand side, what we're seeing that. On the AI side, I think what we're seeing is they will choose a partner like us who is kind of more focused on human-centered AI, build the use cases using whatever platform technologies that they are kind of looking at, and build and test out the use cases that would drive value for them. And on the contracts lifecycle management, I think it tends to be, there is a little bit of a wait and see, like, do I want to invest in a big bang approach, or do I want to do a light CLM so that I can solve some unique challenges to be able to do that? So you'll see like a hodgepodge of stuff depending on the maturity of the organization.
Okay. Yeah, really interesting to hear.
Okay, and I'm just going to quickly cover this. I think we covered a bunch of this already in the conversation. But what you'll see is on the top, 1/3 of the respondents said they're using new technologies, which is great. 1/3 are still saying that they're missing what they need. And then 1/4 of them are saying they want to continue to improve the adoption of the technologies that they chose. And if you want to think about this, one of the challenges that organizations go through, they say, okay, I chose a technology and that technology is going to solve the problem. But technology is not going to solve your mess. I think you need to still look at your processes and transformation to be able to drive the value through technology. So technology is a means to do the work, but not necessarily is going to just solve all of your problems. So there needs to be a very, very specific approach to kind of look at your processes, look at your organizations, and then drive the right effective system to be able to get the value out of it. So I think that continues to be like the key part of the conversation. And on the bottom, you will see a lot of organizations spending time on the left-hand side, like driving efficiency. And they're focusing and wait and see on the effectiveness side. How can I be more predictive? How can I be more using AI to drive the value for my organization? And that continues to be more on the effectiveness side. And that's a little bit behind as compared to the efficiency play. Okay. This is not a new slide. Tailspin, like generally bottom 20%, large transactions, not actively managed. That tends to be the general philosophy. If you look at it, around 9% are saying they're managing with a dedicated process, only 9%. 18% are saying they're just putting junior resources to kind of manage this. And 73% are saying they're just reactive. That means it's either businesses managing it or just ad hoc way of managing it, right? And other one was like for the smaller organizations, it's less than 100K as a transaction. And then for larger organizations, it was 250K. One thing I want us to kind of think about is be intentional. It's okay to say, I'm not going to tackle tail spend right now because I have other big rocks to tackle. That's absolutely fine. But don't get ping-ponged with, okay, I want to do it or I don't want to do it. I think just be intentional about how you want to manage it. And there is a very structured way of managing it. We partnered with Q to kind of build that tail spend program for ATD, and being able to deliver this in the most efficient and effective way to be able to do that is the way to go for this. Okay. The next slide. Now the last theme that we have on the growth strategy. So if you go to the next slide. There are a lot of direct and indirect challenges, right? So if you think about procurement, savings is table stake. What is critical is being able to have source of supply. We went through constrained environment in the last 5 years to be able to get what you need, right? That's very critical. Do you have ESG considerations, making sure that you are meeting your responsibility around that? Sustainability continues to be top of mind for a lot of CPOs. And one of the biggest challenges that people go through on the direct side is not having enough. So there is information, but not having usable synthesized information to take the call. Right, I think that continues to be like a direct challenge. And on the indirect challenge tends to be still under-invested procurement, so you have less resources to be able to do that, right? So that continues to be one of the constant theme around how you are facing some of these direct and indirect challenges. Going to the next slide. So let's quickly take a quick poll. what is your biggest bottleneck right now? So, lack of resources, inefficient processes, limited data visibility, or no supplier visibility. And I think there is one more, that is others. If none of these cover, then others is another one.
Yeah.
So just take 5 seconds to answer this.
Yeah, another good question. I don't know. Hard to really choose. I don't know.
What do you think is answering? What do you think is the biggest one?
I don't know. Kind of leaning towards it's probably going to be something related to the process inefficiencies, perhaps. But then also, like, there's always a data challenge as well. So I'd be in between B and C, perhaps. How about you, Darshan?
I think it's still going to be lack of resources is going to be number one. Let's see where, and then data visibility could be number one. So let's see where it ends up. Yeah.
Let's see, just about now.
Oh.
Well, wasn't too far off with the.
You were right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's always a combination of these things, probably, though. So yeah, I don't know. Keen to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Cool. So I think this is interesting mix. Every organization goes through this. I think not having a normal distribution around it. That means we chose the right questions. That most probably is the way to do it. But let's go to the quick observation that we saw within the survey, right? Continues to be lack of available resources continues to be a problem, which was quarter of the responses that you just mentioned, right? Be intentional about strategic and tactical work. How you tackle work is different. So being able to give the focus for your resources to do the functional jobs well is very critical. So be intentional about that. Have good cross-training. Make sure that you have right processes and being able to streamline and manage that. On the inefficient legal contracting process was another one, where looking at your contracting, being able to use drafting, being able to use standardized T's and C's, playbooks, that continues to be like the key part of the kind of driving efficiency. Limited spend data visibility continues to be one of the challenges. So be very focused on making sure that you know what your spend is, right? That's critical. And then finally, like, partner with your suppliers to get as much information as you can, so you have visibility into extended supply chain. I think that is another one as part of overall tackling the bottlenecks when it comes to your organization's challenges. Okay. So this is the last slide. I think just key themes for you to kind of think about. First of all, right size your organization. Figure out what you need to do, right? And then think about what is your lowest common denominator organization that you need to deliver the work, and figure out the flex capacity to be able to do the work, right? And that flex capacity could be through having a scaled organization internally or a partner. That does not matter. But having the right people in the right roles, that will drive significant value and will increase your spend under management. Know your spend. If you are looking at your spend, make sure that you're taking a strategic view on, you're taking a strategic view of your supply base. So you're not just taking a transactional view, right? That's very critical, so that you can drive the business partner relationship. Continue to reassess. Like, it's okay to look at the market. And if you truly have the partner working with you as a supplier, you can have those dialogues with the supply base to drive the value for your organization and be the true partner to drive the value as an extended supply chain. And then finally, resiliency is make sure that everything what you're looking at, your people, process, technology, you are getting ready for the unknown, right? So not everything is going to be planned. So if something unknown comes in, can you actually tackle that in those circumstances, whether it is COVID, whether some of the challenges that we went through in the last 5 years, or wars? Is your supply chain and procurement organization resilient? So when you think about your organization, think about all the actions that you're doing are geared towards that as well. So these are the 4 key themes. Like, this was exciting to be part of this conversation, Nico. And I think that's what our last slide is.
It is indeed, and leaves us just enough time to actually answer a few of the questions that have come through from the audience. But at this point already, big thanks, Darshan, for walking us through those results. Really interesting stuff there. If you do have questions, do pop them in the chat. If we don't get through all of the questions, we'll make sure to put them through to Darshan so that him and the team can get back to you on some of these questions that we don't have time, unfortunately, to answer. But there's one question that has come through is, I think, a really interesting one and kind of aligns with your conclusion there. It's actually kind of a bit of a summary of some of the points that you've covered previous, and it's really about what are the best first steps for a procurement leader to take to start to bridge the divide between tactical and strategic activities? And then can you also talk about the related roles within the organization on this topic? Does that question make sense to you, Darshan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So so let's say if you think that one of the challenges that we have is looking at the portfolio of procurement work and separating tactical from strategic, where do I start, right? So the first start is also, first of all, like do a really good a good assessment around people, process, technology within the organization. Figuring out what tasks you're doing well, what tasks you're doing not so well, or just skirting by, right? So be honest about that and do a good assessment of your current state. Once you figure that out, you figure out what's your desired state for future. Conversation around going from the current state to the desired state, how do you get there? And once you create an action plan, put the tasks underneath that. I think there is a structure. So like with ProcureAbility, we'll use our 9-dimension framework to kind of drive that conversation with the client. And you can use any framework. The framework is framework. But I think the key part is making sure, are you honest about your current state? And do you have a good understanding of what your future state might look like? And how do you bridge that gap between and create a very detailed action against that? I think that's the first step. Second step is give this as a dedicated focus for somebody from your organization to be able to do that. If you do this kind of part and parcel of just part of the job, I think it's very hard to kind of be that intentional and objective about it. So I think that would be kind of the second piece. Third is consider a partner for short term, like figure out what's your possibilities. Somebody coming in and objectively looking at your organization generally gives a very different results because you have less baggage about what the reality is, right? Somebody coming in and really looking at it and questioning it objectively tends to give you a little bit different outcome as well. So that could be another action that people can take.
Interesting stuff. Looking at the questions here, a few of them are about the slides, whether they are shared. So I thought I might just jump into this, put this slide up here so you can actually download the full report by scanning the QR code, and should be downloadable there from the platform for you as well. So you can run through the findings from the proper white paper that ProcureAbility published together with Procurement Leaders. So I just wanted to flash that up there. And then one of the questions that I found quite interesting, so I wanted to put through to you, Darshan, was that if you don't have a center of excellence in place yet, how do you start one? I know it's probably a question where there isn't a simple answer to that, but what are your thoughts on getting that center of excellence started? And perhaps you have a view on that from your specific role.
Yeah. So I think you can take multiple options for center of excellence. So depending on what your organization's structure is. So number one, what I would do is, if it's a small organization where people are doing this as just part of the job, identify an individual that has a knack for continuous improvement and give them that as a mission, as part of their job, to say, okay, find these 3 to 5 key things that we want to accomplish for next year. Let's put a project plan in place to drive this. So example could be, I want to have a good spend cube, or I want to have a good knowledge management system, so I have all the information together in a whatever format that I want, right? Like these simple types of questions, you can come up with, make it very simple. Don't make it like a big if they're doing it as part of the job, right? So do 3 to 5 and focus on those 3 to 5. So that's how I would start, as saying, okay, my lowest hanging fruit problem is these 3 areas. Let's identify those. Give that to somebody that has a knack to do the continuous process improvement and being able to do that. So that's number one option, where you are kind of small, resource constrained organization. Other one is like, if you have an ability to get like a dedicated 1 or 2 people to be able to do that, invest, put that plan in place for next quarter, next year, whatever your planning cycle might look like, and start smaller with that. I think that could be the second option. Or third option, if you have an outsourced partner or a service provider that you're working with, I think doing that as part of their execution tends to be a lot more effective, because there is an expectation around continuous improvement from the partner side. So you can kind of do a joint COE with your partner to be able to drive some of this transparency and being able to drive the value for the procurement organization. So you can take that like multiple approaches depending on what your maturity and size of the organization might look like.
It's interesting, Darshan. And then a follow-up question from a slightly different angle, but in terms of technology, in terms of the 3 most important automation tools, what would you recommend? What are is it kind of the same answer as well in terms of the low-hanging fruits, or is it, if you look at this directly from technology perspective, is the answer different? But like, what are the 1 to 3 areas the procurement teams generally should prioritize from automation perspective?
So I'm going to take a tactical approach to this one, just to kind of clear for everyone. We're a technology agnostic firm, so we're not like partner with like a one specific. That's not the point of view here. I think I would look at 3 to 5 use cases that you're trying to solve on the efficiency side. So the 4 major areas that we generally see is invoicing, reconciliation, like automating that portion of the business. That continues to be an invoice intelligence. That continues to be one of the easiest one to drive. And that generally is driven by static AI. You don't need a generative AI to be able to drive that. Number 2 is contract intelligence. As the tools mature, being able to reduce your time in reading the contracts, but really actioning the contracts, right? That continues to be like the second portion when it comes to like the big value add. Integrating market intelligence into your spend management or spend cube to create predictive analytics. I think that's like the third piece where we're seeing like the big investments and the teams are spending a lot of energy on. And finally, I would say it's what people are looking at is, can I create an efficient engine to manage my sourcing? So when it comes to like sourcing playbooks, sourcing templates, do I have an easy way to automate all of that depending on the category and pull it in as part of the conversation and being able to automate that? I think there's just 3 to 4 big areas when it comes to automation.
Really interesting. Thank you for sharing those thoughts, Darshan. I'm afraid we are at time here, so we do have to wrap. Probably would have carried on the conversation for good another hour here, but big thank you, Darshan, for walking us through the findings from your benchmarking study, as well as partnering with us on this webinar. Really interesting stuff. Just as a final reminder, you can download some additional resources from the platform, and if you can share your feedback on this as well, that would be massively appreciated. Always helps us improve these sessions. A few questions we're still sitting on in the inbox, so we will get back to you on those separately. So fear not, we haven't completely abandoned you on those questions. But yeah, all there is for me to say at this point is just a big thank you again for Darshan, for everyone in the audience for joining us on this webinar, and hope to see you in another session sometime soon. Hope you have a really good rest of the day and rest of your evenings. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.